Do you have a tax plan to beat the tax man in retirement? I'm Tracy Capelman. How do you keep more of your hard-earned money when you need it most? We'll have some answers right now on Your Wealth Health. Hello and welcome to Your Wealth Health. I'm Tracy Capelman. I'm here once again with the founder and CEO of Hilltop Wealth Solutions, Eric Brenner. Eric, many people are working on their taxes and they may be wondering if they could have somehow paid less in taxes, especially people who are retired or nearing retirement. Today, we begin a series of shows called A Tax Plan to Beat the Tax Man in Retirement. Eric, you believe people could save a lot of money if they put more time into tax planning.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of people, when they get into retirement or even prior to retirement, they really don't think it through like they should. And, Tracy, they also think that they're going to pay less taxes. They're going to be in a lower tax bracket. So really, here's the problem. We have a graphic for this, Tracy, that people often pay more in retirement because the system is confusing. It treats various income types differently, and it contains hidden taxes and potentially penalties.
Wow. Well, Eric, you said that Hilltop Wealth Solutions is a fiduciary advisory firm. Why is that important?
Well, that's important because fiduciary means we must always act in the best interest of the client. So what we want people to know is that when you choose to work with an advisor, you have a choice on how they work. They could work for a company or a firm that sells products, but really not be a fiduciary, which means they must always act in the best interest of the client. You also choose to work with a fiduciary. So what we think is that it's important to choose the type of investments, the strategy, and all of that. But it's also really important to know what your advisor and how they work. And really developing a solution. So Tracy, I want to reference this graphic that we have, that because your tax exposure is going to change throughout the 4 stages of retirement, you need to anticipate taxes, the possible tax surcharges, Social Security, and really a fiduciary helps bring that all together for them.
More complicated, I think, than a lot of people realize. Can you explain the 4 stages of retirement then, what you were just referring to, and what you consider the issues that catch people by surprise when they actually retire?
Yeah, so this is how I think about it, Tracy, is that, I think about mountain climbing. And so, during the mountain climbing, they're climbing they're climbing up the mountain and they get to the top and the crest and they start to come down. Well, 80% of all fatalities in mountain climbing happen on the descent, not on the incline. So I want to take people through kind of those 4 stages. The first one is pre-retirement. That's kind of that 50 to 60. They're not quite retired yet. They're really thinking about it, but they're not quite there. They need to make sure that they're saving in the best places, and are they going to be on track? Then we're going to get to early retirement. So early retirement is those first years of retirement. It could be age 60 to 70. This is oftentimes where people kind of miss the boat because they think, I don't need to do any planning. I'm not there. My required minimum distributions aren't required yet. I've got some time. But I want to tell you that I have run across and recently looked at a client situation and some planning, currently in the 12% tax bracket. If they do no planning, they're projected within 4 years to be in the 22% tax bracket. So that's early retirement. Then we have middle retirement. That's kind of the 70 to 80. They're now required minimum distribution coming into play. They are continuing to accumulate assets. People a lot of times end up with more assets than really what they expected when they were saving. And then finally is kind of towards the end. That's late retirement. Maybe they've made the trips and travel and all of that they've done. They're now starting to maybe be more inclined and maybe giving to children, whether they want to do that while they're living or they want to make sure they pass that on. So those are the 4 stages. Each of the stages needs to be treated differently, Tracy. And they really need to think about beating the tax man in each of those stages.
Makes a lot of sense. And Eric, longevity is really a much bigger issue than people realize these days. And of course, healthcare costs can just devastate a budget. How can you help people plan for those kinds of issues?
Yeah, so healthcare is always going to change, and it's going to be a factor for sure. So what we need to make sure of is you need to make sure that people are planning for some of those healthcare costs, and what that's going to entail. If they're prior to Medicare age, they may have some out-of-pocket costs because a lot of folks don't have their own healthcare now. Or they can't take it with them when they retire. And then once in Medicare, they need to just make sure they have proper supplemental insurance and those insurances in place to help protect them.
Okay, so if I'm nearing retirement and I decide to get more strategic about it with a good tax plan, what's the first thing I need to know about retirement and taxes?
Well, I think the first thing is that just because you're at a certain tax level does not mean you're not going to be that somewhere down the line. And what I mean by that is, I mentioned that just working with a client that is recently retired that's in the 12% bracket, they really thought they were going to be in that bracket, throughout retirement. And in fact, we did projections in looking at the growth of their investments, really going to bump up. They're going to pay more income taxes, Tracy, in 4 or 5 years than they did 4 or 5 years ago. So that's really where people, I think, kind of miss the boat is they think I'm okay right now, I'm fine. And they don't really do projections to really look at now, but also in the future.
And Eric, you probably have a lot of people feel like they have Social Security to depend on and Medicare to cover healthcare costs, but there are actually tax traps connected to them as well, right?
Well, there is. In fact, I got this book here, Tracy. So this is more than 800 pages. I just got my 2021 Social Security and Medicare fact book. 800 pages. So, Social Security and Medicare is complicated. It's not simplistic. So when you take that and you add it onto the tax laws, it really becomes complicated. And so you just need to make sure that you're doing the best for your situation.
And that's going to be the focus of next week's show. There are obviously a lot of complicated issues related to good tax planning for retirement. And I understand you guys have an offer for our viewers.
We do. So we are offering up a complimentary retirement tax analysis. Now, typically, if you were to get this done, anywhere between $500 to $1,000, and we're offering this up for the first 10 people from this show to call the number on the screen, which is that 574-633-1476. We will put together that analysis for them and really give them a snapshot as to where they're at today and give them some guidance to what they may be able to do to help start beating the tax man.
Oh, that's a great offer. Well, we are out of time for this week's show. As we mentioned, next week we're going to continue with our special series of reports, A Tax Plan to Beat the Tax Man in Retirement. We're going to examine planning for retirement accounts. How do you get the most out of them without getting hurt by the tax man? And also the tax traps associated with Social Security and Medicare. Make sure you check us out on yourwealthhealth.com and click on the link to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For Eric Brenner and the Hilltop Wealth Solutions staff, I'm Tracy Capelman. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Until then, stay wealthy, Michiana. We hope you found this discussion helpful today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for new content weekly.